Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Four Persons. We have a part two of a show here. We were going to try to do it last weekend, but that didn't work out. So we're doing it today. Um, and it would have been interesting if it had gone last weekend because it would have been one day after the 3-year anniversary of the horrific crash. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, let me bring you up to speed. On January 31st of 2022, there was a horrific car crash in Strongsville, Ohio, and the driver of the car, a Mackenzi Shirilla, was airlifted to the hospital, and the two passengers were presumably killed on impact. Police didn't show up until approximately about 40 minutes after the impact. But Eric, I think we can both agree that Dominic and Davion were probably killed on impact, right?
Yeah, that's pretty correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have here is a situation where uh, Dominic Russo, her boyfriend, was killed, and Davion Flanagan, a mutual friend, was also killed, and she was severely injured. It took many surgeries for her to survive and recover. And lo and behold, through months and months of mourning and dealing with this traumatic and terrible event, in November, things took a dramatic turn for the worse when the driver of this vehicle was charged with murder, the murder of the two victims. And I've studied this somewhat extensively. Eric has studied it much more, even extensively than I have. Eric, we are in full agreement that that was a unjust verdict, and let's kick off there.
Okay. I think you said January of 2022. It's actually July
Did I
31st.
say January?
Yep. You said. I think you said January. So,
Okay, that means I'm working too many hours. It was July 31st, 2022 was the accident.
correct.
Where I got January, I was within 6 months. Give me credit.
Yeah. So yeah, at the last video that we did, I was having some technical issues. I wanted to show some slides to kind of show kind of the in-depth, kind of down the rabbit hole I went on this case.
Mhm.
You're correct. The On July 31st, 2022, at 5:35 and 24 seconds, the car crashed. Um, the problem with the video is the car crashing is you can't see any of the occupants, and I've reviewed that video multiple times and I care to count. You can't even see the standard pieces of equipment such as headrests, for example, which made me go, "How can you determine anything?" Um, but it actually the story sort of, if you want to go with a prequel, if you will, actually began on July 17th, um, where a series of text messages took place between Mackenzi Shirilla and Christine Russo, mother of Dominic Russo. And I have those. I wanted to show these the last time I was on, but like I
Mhm.
said, technical issues. But I don't have those right now. At least I hope it works. So 1 second here. Um, Let me see if I can just share my screen here.
Okay, so these are text messages between Mackenzie and the mother of Davion Flanagan, right?
Correct.
All right, let's put these up on the stage.
So the way that this reads is going to be, uh,
Maybe blow them up a little bit so they're easier to read. Uh,
yeah.
Zoom
So
in a little bit if you can.
how's that?
Okay. Yeah, walk us through it. What are we seeing here?
All right. So the first text message, and all of the dark bubbles, those are from Mackenzie.
Mhm.
So the first three messages are the initial call for help, the plea from Mackenzie. Can you come and get Dom? He just grabbed my steering wheel on the highway trying to spin up my car and hurt me. I'm scared to drive BC because it's raining, so I need him to get picked up. If he doesn't get out of my car, I'm calling my dad, so please tell him to get out.
Now, have we confirmed forensically, like with the cell phone company, that these are legit?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So this is from the petitioner's exhibit directly from her phone. These are screen captures directly from her phone.
Okay, okay.
And this is what was submitted as part of her defense, or at least on file, if you will.
Yeah,
Police,
let me interrupt you for a second
yeah,
because that's an important point. This was available evidence that, for reasons inexplicable, the defense declined to use or appropriately use this evidence, right?
correct. The
Okay.
judge who um, ruled on this case, and for those who need a quick reminder, this was not a jury trial. This was a bench trial. So the judge not only controlled the courtroom, handling objections and determining whether to sustain them or overrule the objections, but she was also the person who decided whether or not Mackenzie was guilty or not guilty.
Right.
She never saw these. Judge Russo never saw these. These were never entered into evidence, even though in a post conviction um, appeal process, Mackenzie herself, in an affidavit, said, I wanted these in there. I told my lawyer, I want this in there. And he basically ignored her.
Which is
Um,
incredible.
it is,
Yeah.
especially with what you see here. Now, why do I believe her? Well, starting off right here, doesn't misspelled. When you're dealing with people who are very emotionally charged, very excited, it's basically brain, thumb, phone, send. They don't give time to make corrections. They don't allow the phone to autocorrect. It's just
Right. The
boom,
panic
boom, boom, out,
situation. Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So the next response is from Christine Russo. That's the white portion here. Hench is on his way. Calm down for now. Ease, please. Um,
Who is Hinch?
Hench is Christopher Martin. He is the one that 3 plus months after these text messages went out, and 3 plus months after the crash, he is the one that reported to the police saying that Mackenzie threatened to crash the car.
In other words, he committed perjury because he knew that was not the case.
Correct.
He
So
knew what had actually happened, and what he testified to the police was the opposite of what had actually happened.
correct. And
Why isn't why isn't he in prison?
I don't know. And the thing with him is, and we discussed this the last time I was on,
Mhm.
of his fairly lengthy criminal record. The fact that he brings absolutely zero documentation or evidence with him, no video recording, no audio recording, no additional eyewitness names that he could give to the police so that they could go verify.
Yeah.
He brought nothing. And what
Yeah,
he does,
and Eric, I think that's a big issue, but I also, and I'm sorry if I keep interrupting you
hmm
because you keep bringing up things that are just very, important points.
hmm
Not only is that a very salient and important issue, but the other salient and important issue is that, where was he living at the time?
he was living in the household of Christine Russo.
Okay. So if I'm a juror and I'm looking at that objectively, she had leverage over him.
Yes.
She had leverage over him, not only because he didn't want to be homeless, okay,
hmm
but because she knew of his past. She maybe had secrets that who knows,
Yeah.
maybe he was engaged in some stuff that he didn't want to come to light.
hmm
So he had motive, or at least possible motive, to be forced to testify in a certain way. Uh,
Correct.
Go ahead, please continue.
Yeah. And with Mr. Martin, he uh, one of the people that represented him in his legal issues in 2018, which we discussed last time, was Christine Russo.
Hmm.
So, continuing on with the text messages here, TBH, that's shorthand for to be honest. Again, that panicked mentality, you want to get the message
Right,
out real quick.
right.
I can't calm down when he just tried to end my life. Then he lied to you about it because Dominic apparently was on the phone with his mother while she is texting. Mackenzie is texting Christine. I'm just trying to diffuse now. I'm not mad at anyone. And then going up over to the right, I don't think he's capable of that when he keeps telling me to shut my mouth or to shut up and duct tape my mouth. I do not feel safe. He's also threatening to blackmail me to my mom. He's not getting out. He also blocked me so I can't go pick up any of my belongings at his house, which is the house she owned, which was
Mhm.
right next door to her house. I hope this is a learning experience for him on what not to do to women because I really don't think he knows how to treat them at all. Christine replies back saying, "Stop the fighting and stop lying. When he gets your things, you can get yours. Or when he gets his things, you can get yours."
Okay, so what is
Now,
the lie that Christine is accusing Mackenzie of?
well, obviously, this is a bickering quarrel, and the prosecution say it was toxic. Okay, I guess we can call this type of communication back and forth, and what we're seeing here could be considered a toxic situation. Um, the problem is that there was no reports made to the police prior to the crash. Okay, those are the things I look for. It's like it's very easy to say, "Oh, it's toxic," or they had this abusive relationship, or all this other stuff. But if there's no documentation and you're just using assumptions or word of mouth, it's really difficult to pin down.
And what I'm
Especially
looking at here, Eric, if there's this is reported to the police and there's an arrest made based on what we're seeing here, Dominic would be the one who would have been arrested.
correct. Um, and again, this goes back to the hashtag Believe Her movement a few years ago. It's like here we have these text messages, but we're not willing to believe her. What? That makes no sense. But we're willing to believe an ex-con who brings nothing to the table, no evidence.
Right.
Makes no sense.
And
Uh,
as we've established, could possibly have motive,
correct,
motive or coercion.
correct. So continuing on, as we can see, this is a fairly lengthy text exchange between Christine and Mackenzie. Uh, First of all, I'm not lying about anything. Maybe you shouldn't take his word so seriously. You don't know how he treats me behind closed door. It's never okay to try and end somebody's life or put their hands on people. Right there. It's never okay to try to end someone's life. And yet it's like the prosecution, the police, and the whole people against Mackenzie just put down the Uno card and reversed everything 180 degrees. It makes no sense. Um, Christine replies back, says no one should touch anyone. No fighting inside fighting for sure in the car. Then she says he never put his hands on you. Uh, Mackenzie replies back saying, "You need to tell him that. He tried to end my life today and told me, 'Do you want to die?' I almost hit the wall and I could have died." And then Christine says, "And you haven't blackmailed him with the cops 100 times?" Now, this is where uh, people should be a little bit aware that Dominic does have a criminal or did have a criminal record. He was known to sell drugs. Um, this is well known locally, and there is documentation that he did. So that's where kind of the blackmailing with the cops come into
This
play.
is this is really creepy stuff
Oh,
because Christine is she almost seems to be defending or excusing Dominic's abusive behavior of Mackenzie,
mhm.
threatening behavior of Mackenzie, and then you know her son being blackmailed with the cops. So now at this point, you have to believe that Christine, was a lawyer, right,
Yep, she still is a lawyer. Yes.
was aware of her son's criminal history,
Hmm.
and that this is spooky stuff here. Here,
Yep. And I'm hesitant to say this, but it's actually a matter of public record, so I will say it, is that Christine Russo herself um, had a criminal record until she had it expunged. She is a former prosecutor for the county in which Mackenzie was prosecuted. While Christine Russo was working for the prosecutor's office, she was arrested for drug possession and she had to resign. Um, Years later, she was able to get her conviction expunged, but it's still a matter of public record.
so Eric,
Uh,
let me ask you this: have you been able to establish any kind of a connection between Christine Russo and the judge Margaret Russo? Is there any kind of a connection there?
so Russo is a very common name, from my understanding, in Ohio. It's sort of like um, Johnson or Hanson here in Minnesota, where you
Okay.
have 9,000 different Hansons, and the same similar situation there um, in that part of Ohio is have a lot
Okay.
of Russos.
So no
So
connection.
there's no connection to the best of my knowledge. So
Okay.
if there was, then that is immediate grounds for the judge to recuse herself. Um, and in fact, had I been the judge assigned to the case and saw that one of the deceased was last name Russo, I would have automatically recused myself anyway, just to prevent that argument of
The appearance.
I'm the appearance of bias. I would
It's
say,
interesting that you bring that up. I worked for a company a few years ago, and I keep interjecting these things
mhm,
to amplify the points that you're making. I worked for a company a few years ago that had a policy. So let's just say you and I were both fans of a certain football team, okay? And you were a vendor that we worked with, like you were one of our contractors or something that we worked with. And
mhm,
you and I, on our own, decided that we were going to go see this particular football team. And we decided to split the costs right down the middle, tickets, parking, transportation, meals, and everything 50-50, right down the middle. Well, this company that I worked for, that would be a violation of their conflict of interest policy. Not because you've done anything improper, but because the mere appearance that there could be an improper relationship. The mere appearance is enough to, in their view, to create a conflict of interest. And
yes,
the reason I bring that out as an example is because exactly what you said is true. Anything in the legal profession that would even give the appearance that it could be a conflict, the judge should have at least addressed that, if not openly recused herself.
correct. And like I said, if I was in the judge's shoes, that's exactly what I would have done. However, that didn't happen, so we're left with this. But I should go back real quick and go back up a little bit here, where she
Mhm.
mentions hench. You asked who that was, and I said it was
Yeah,
Christopher Martin. Hench is Christopher Martin's nickname. It's short for henchman.
yeah, I caught that.
Um, I'm sorry, but henchman is a job name or job title for a villain in a James Bond film, not something I would like to be called myself. So,
Right.
um, continuing on.
The henchman is the guy that does your dirty work for you.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Mackenzie replies back to the blackmail part saying, LOL, clearly you don't care about the situation. I should have known you would have taken his side. He could literally kill me and you would still believe him over me. Both my purses need to be outside within 10 minutes because I'm coming to get them. And then she says, my dad's coming to get my purses right now. Christine replies back saying, I'm not arguing. And then Mackenzie goes, as long as you're defending his actions, he's never going to learn that he's wrong. Now, this took place on the 31st. Or
You mean
excuse
the
me,
17th.
17th, not the 31st, excuse me, 17th. So
You and I are both having problems with dates.
Yes, we are. It's been a very long day for me, too. So July 17th, 2022 at 12:45 p.m. is when this all started. All right. Moving on to the next part. July 17th, 2022 at 4:27 p.m. Dominic has the white. Mackenzie is, again, the black bubbles. I'm sorry. Why is he apologizing if he was the non-aggressor?
If he was the victim, yeah.
So she goes, that's not enough to fix it this time. Again, he goes, well, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say sorry. That's it. She replies back, oh, so you're sorry. So you wanted to say sorry, but you didn't want to fix any of the massive problem you created. Cool. Yeah, it's not like anything's broken. If that's how you feel, then we're done. So again, the narrative is that Dominic was going to break up with her. She couldn't deal with that. And therefore, she committed this heinous crime of smashing her car into the building because she couldn't face the fact that Dominic was going to break up with her. Well, this is the first time it's ever been mentioned, someone breaking up with somebody, and it's Mackenzie saying it, not Dominic. How does that work? I don't understand that. So, the next slide over, how can I believe that you're never going to do that again? This is on the day after, on July 18th.
Mm-hmm.
How can I believe that you're never going to do that again? I can't, because I don't know your limit. Somebody who loves me would never do that. Never. I couldn't even do it if you told me to, but I guess that's different for you. He goes, yeah, I wasn't trying anything. I was trying KMS first. I would die first, LOL. KMS, I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to refer there. My interpretation is kill myself.
Yeah.
I was trying to kill myself first. That's what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't believe me, then yeah, just break up with me. If you can't.
That's what he's saying here. Yeah, it clearly wasn't trying to do anything. I was trying to kill myself first, ? And I would have died first. So it's very clear what he's saying here is, well, of course I wasn't trying to do anything because it would have killed me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, if you don't believe me, then just, yeah, break up with me. If you can't believe me, then there's no point anyway.
This is incredible, Eric. He's agreeing. He's admitting to the crime here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because what he did to Mackenzie was an assault.
Right.
This is incredible.
Blatant. So, I mean, the fact that you're not saying anything to make me believe you shows that you would do it again. And you're saying to kill yourself, would you end me too? ? Why can you not fix the fucking death of you? Like, it's almost like you have fun doing it. No, I was saying if I was trying to kill anyone that in that situation, I'd die too, and probably first. So you would kill yourself first and I'd die second. Why are you ignoring everything else I say? And that was the extent of the text messages.
Eric, this is incredible because in the case, they portrayed the evidence as strongly suggesting that Mackenzie had a predisposition to committing this act of murder slash suicide. And this
Mhm.
evidence right here is clearly showing that if anyone had that predisposition, it was in fact Dominic, not Mackenzie.
That is my impression of it as well. Yes. Um, so
So do you think on that night it's possible that it was attempted murder, but not by Mackenzie, but by Dominic? Is that possible?
it's certainly a possible scenario. Yes. You have to remember that Dominic was much larger than Mackenzie. She's
Right.
only 5'4", about 90 pounds. Um, I know it's impolite to talk about a woman's weight, but that's roughly how much she weighed. Um, in in comparison, I've carried in 2 bags of softener salt on my shoulder that weighed more than her.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, size is relative, whether people want to believe it or not. And as I said before, in our last broadcast, this was not a case of mommy Mackenzie strapping or putting her 2 infant children into car seats and not buckling them up. These were grown men. Dominic was certainly a lot larger than her, and unfortunately, without a in-car camera, which would remove all doubt, one way or another, we are left to speculate with what went on inside. But just looking at this from an investigative standpoint, the next person I go and talk to are Christine Russo and folks like that, and they just say, "Oh yeah, that didn't happen. My son's a good boy." It's like, okay, you're not giving me anything tangible here. Yeah, a cell phone check, a record check would say you were on the phone with Dominic on or at roughly the same time as these text messages are being sent, but there's nothing there to document it. So,
Okay, so Eric, let me give you a plausible scenario.
mhm,
Okay, plausible scenario. Um, we believe that there was some type of a medical type of situation, and we base that on Mackenzie's blood oxygen saturation level at the time that she was
mhm.
extracted from the vehicle. Believe it was 80%.
It was 82% is
Okay.
was the oxygen level
That's
intake,
very low. Okay. For anybody that
but
doesn't know, that's you're barely alive at that point.
yeah. I would like to point out that the pulse oxygen meter, which is the device that would register and measure that, those devices have a error percentage rating of about 2%. So, meaning it can be as high as 84% or as low as 80%. So it will vary about 12 or about 2%, not
Okay.
12%,
Okay.
2%.
So we believe that there was a medical episode that factored into this, and the fact is she was probably or almost definitely not sitting in an upright driving position at the point of impact because how she was found uh, isn't supportive of that, and her injuries are consistent with her having been in a down position prior to impact, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Um, let
so
me pull up.
so yeah, I want you to pull up this image. You created an image of how the bodies, how the three persons were actually found in the vehicle, and I can't believe those stick drawings by the police were actually allowed as evidence. That's just incredible to me.
Yep.
And I'm not making fun of the police officers, but
hmm
go ahead.
So this is excerpt from the police report. Um, so everyone here can see it.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead
and
and read it.
I highlighted the parts that pertain to how she was positioned inside of the vehicle. I looked inside the still intact driver's side window, and I saw a young white female's body, which did not appear to be moving or breathing. All we could see was the lower torso of her body and a part of her leg. She appeared to be folded over and pinned under the passenger side, underneath the passenger dashboard, which had caved in on top of her. We were able to cut away the airbags and get to the female driver. The driver was alive and appeared to be breathing, but her upper body was still pinned underneath the passenger's dashboard, which had collapsed on top of her. We were able to make out sounds of her mumbling. So she's alive, she's breathing, she's not saying anything.
She's in
Uh,
bad condition, yeah.
she's incoherent, she's out of it. So later on the
Okay.
report, at this time, we were able to free the driver, Mackenzi Shirilla. Mackenzi was talking briefly and was able to give us her first name. I confirmed the name with dispatch. She appeared to have a severe lower right leg injuries as well as right arm injuries. We attempted talking with her more about her passengers' names, and she uttered Jacob to SFD personnel. That's Strongsville Fire Department.
Mhm.
She then briefly asked about Davian. Mackenzie appeared to have a head injury as well from this crash. So, based upon, and these are the sketches,
Which are just
these are rudimentary at best.
that's being generous. I mean, the fact that something like this was admitted as evidence is just
Correct.
astounding.
So, they have Mackenzie identified this way, Davian is positioned in this way, um,
Dominic.
Dominic is in a position this way. Now, this gives us a rough, very rough idea of how everybody was positioned, but it's not anything to scale. So, based upon these two sketches, as well as the information that I just read, using a little bit more sophisticated computer program, I was able to create a much more realistic um, diagram.
And what program did you use?
It is called Smart Draw.
Okay. Okay.
So,
This is a pretty accurate rendering of what the police saw in the vehicle.
yep, I will. I will state that the program is limited in some fashion, such as these are static images. I'm not able to manipulate the various limbs of the static drawing. So
Okay.
um, that's just how it is. But we know that Dominic's arm was more positioned out. They even said it was hanging out a little bit of the rear window. So, and the seat back that would normally support you in the passenger seat, that was broken. So it was more. He was in a much more reclined position,
Okay.
which is why he looks like this. But if you look at how Mackenzie, who is depicted in red, is positioned, this is based upon those descriptions and the stick figure drawings.
Now,
Half
I
of her,
want to just ask you something real quick because I want to
yes,
make sure I'm catching everything. Go back to this stick figure drawing real quick. Okay. In this, in both of these stick figure drawings, her feet seem to be pointing forward, back to where the pedals are,
hmm
the brake and the gas pedal. That's not what I see in your drawing. What is the orientation of her feet? Were they in fact pointed towards the pedals, or they like more like what I'm seeing in your drawing?
yeah. So again, this is the hampering of the limitations of
That's
the.
why I'm asking the question. Yeah.
They were more in a down pedaled towards
Okay.
the pedals. In fact, I believe her right foot was still on the gas pedal or very close to it.
Okay.
In fact, her slipper was still on the gas pedal when they extracted her from the vehicle.
Yeah. That I did know.
The other slipper from her left foot um, was either on the floorboard or it fell out of the car when they opened the door to free her. So if you look on how she's positioned with the center console, her upper body and head, And if we remember from the first video that we did, John, where I showed the crash test from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety,
Hmm.
there is an airbag at the knee level right there. And if her head was sitting in that vicinity, it would have definitely caused a whiplash like injury, which most
Yeah.
likely is the culprit of the injury to her
Concussion.
neck.
Yeah.
Um, which, for those who are tuning in for the first time, the injuries that Mackenzie sustained was a fractured C1 vertebra. That is the first bone directly below your skull in your neck. She sustained a broken right humerus. That's the arm bone between the shoulder and the elbow. A broken right femur, which is from the hip bone to the knee. She had 3 broken ribs on her right side, the 8th, ninth, and 10th ribs, and a lacerated liver. Those are the most serious injuries that she had. She had a
All the injuries you just listed are impossible if she's not down like this prior to impact, right?
correct.
Okay.
So if she collapsed on this after the motor vehicle crash had been, after
She does not sustain those injuries.
she would collapse and she'd be like that, but she would still be held up by the seat belt because the seatbelt tensioner would have engaged. But just looking at how this diagram shows where the ribs would be right about here. And if this is where the gear shift lever is for the Toyota Camry, most likely the injuries to her ribs and liver was caused by that gear shift lever, which could have only been done at the time of the accident.
Right.
That's why I believe this was an accident.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So before we move to Dominic and Davion,
mhm,
is there any plausible? Well, we pretty much eliminated the fact that the impact throws her into this position,
correct.
because even if the impact throws her into this position, she doesn't sustain these injuries because she had to have been in this position absorbing the impact from the gear shift and the drive passenger side airbag, etc. So she
Correct.
had to
If
have been in this position previously. Okay, so that's first thing.
if
Okay,
she was sitting upright, like the police and the prosecutions believe she would have gone forward directly into the airbag from the steering wheel. She might have
right,
received some injuries to her face because of that impact from the steering wheel, because shorter people, and Mackenzie being 5'4" would be considered shorter, at least compared to me, because I'm 6'1". The closer you get to the steering wheel, the less likely time there is to react.
okay. So when we
And
talk about forces
mhm,
and G forces and the physical forces that we're talking about here, um, we talk about leverage and how bodies are able to exert force in certain ways depending on how they're positioned.
mhm,
If you're trying to lift, push, or pull a load, you're going to be more or less successful depending on your position. If I'm trying to push a weight and my arms are way extended like this, I'm not exerting very much force on the object. But if I'm down close to it like this, I'm exerting a lot more force on it. Reason I'm bringing this up is because if she's bent over like this, laid over like this, a
mhm,
5'4", 90-pound girl, you've now got a car that's traveling at 100 miles an hour, hitting bumps, jumping curbs. The forces involved in that impact and that kind of jostling, we're to believe that from that angle she's got the strength, and this is assuming that she's conscious, which we don't even know that, but
mhm,
assuming that she's conscious and deliberate, we've got to believe that she's got the strength and the stamina, physical stamina, to hold that gas pedal through the floor, through all of that turbulence and all of that jolting. I don't buy that, Eric. Do you?
Yeah, no, I don't. And part of the information that you see from the vehicle's black box, the data recorder, j- um, it registered a few uh, instances, and there was jostling on the gear shift lever. The gear shift lever itself, um, one second, let me see if I can pull up the owner's manual here. I can show you.
Have you reached out to her attorney with this information to see if
Yes,
it might you have? Okay.
yes. I'm just trying to find the. I grabbed the wrong file.
The other thing while you're looking that up, Eric,
Mhm,
the other thing that strikes me is that if she is in that position, now we know for a fact this is not conjecture or speculation. We know for a fact that the car lurched hard to the right just before impact.
mhm.
And that was caused by the actual physical turning of the steering wheel. It's not like the car would jumped over and to the right, but the steering wheel was turned hard to the right. Correct?
Correct,
We know that for a fact, right?
correct. We know that for a fact. There was
It
a hard, sharp right turn just moments before impact. So yes, there
Okay,
was.
so now again, a 90-pound girl lying on her back or her side, okay, reaching back with her arm is going to have the strength, the physical arm strength to pull a car almost 90 degrees to the right when that car is moving at 100 miles an hour and jumping curbs. Again, I don't find that plausible. Do you?
No. Um, and the reason why I believe the car was turned sharply to the right is because that was the only real sense of direction that either Dominic or Davian would have been able to turn the vehicle. And I'm suspecting it was Dominic. And here's the reason why. When you're sitting inside, if you're sitting inside of a vehicle, and anyone can do this at home, um, just sit in the passenger side of your vehicle and try to push the steering wheel to the left. You'll find that you get to a very quickly um, pushing on the top of the steering wheel to the left is you have very limited movement. Whereas pulling the steering wheel to you, which would be a right hand turn, is a lot easier. Now, if you do an underside grab from the bottom of the steering wheel and pull it towards you, you're now going to turn the steering wheel to the left. But if the driver is laying down, chances are you can't reach over to grab it to make a left hand turn. That's why I believe it was Dominic who pulled that steering wheel to the right.
Okay. And did that in order to avoid a collision or did that in order to cause a collision in your estimation?
In my estimation, um, I believe it was to avoid a collision.
Okay.
But based upon those text messages, it's very hard
Be sure.
to be sure. Yes. Um,
Okay. So I
so
understand looking at this picture how Dominic is thrown backwards from the impact and lies back in the position that you show here.
mhm.
Based on the impact and based on the way that the car impacted that wall, it's difficult for me to get my mind around how Davion wound up in the position that he wound up. What are your thoughts on that?
So when the vehicle um, hit the corner of the building, if go back to that Insurance Institute for Highway Safety video that I showed, the car pirouettes. It does a pirouette in a clockwise position. Davian is not buckled in. Neither Davian nor Dominic were buckled in.
So he's thrown that way by like
So
the whiplash motion of the car.
correct.
Okay.
Um, it it almost I almost believe that had the car not rotated, chances are he would have been ejected through the windshield. That's
Okay.
just my firm belief. Um, because of how he kind of was positioned. As the car is rotating clockwise, he's just sort of kind of
A
caught in the
flying
middle
object is
with,
basically
because you do have to remember there's a seat that's right here. You have a partial seat and a console right here, that type of thing.
uh-huh.
Plus, you have another person that's more or less blocking your way. So that's why he kind of ended up in this position that you see him in. Um, Again, this is all based upon the sketches that we showed just a few minutes ago, as well as the narrative from the police report. I have not seen uncensored photographs of the crime scene, and the reason for that is because there are strict state laws that prevent, um, for lack of a better term, gory images of injured parties from being released to the public.
Mhm.
Um, so those were this is as close as you're probably going to get without actually seeing the images themselves. But it's a very, very close representation, I firmly believe, on what we have been presented thus far.
Based on the police reaction, though, when you see when the video of the body cam video of when the
Hmm.
police arrived at the scene, what they saw in that car was pretty gruesome.
Correct. From my understanding, it shook up a few people, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Uh, Two young men lost their lives, something that shouldn't have happened, and I understand the anger by the families of Dominic and Davian, because that's part of the normal grieving process is bargaining, grieving, or excuse me, bargaining, anger, depression. Those are the
Yeah.
type of typical responses,
Denial, yeah.
and denial.
Yeah.
Um, and I think people in the family members in this case have were angry and have hung on to that anger, and have been essentially helping block Mackenzie's appeals at every single attempt and every single turn. So, um, but so far, everything I've seen, this is not a murder. This is an accident, and Mackenzie is not at fault. Um, and the reason why I say that is because of two case laws in Ohio. And let me just pull those up here real quick. Okay. This is the case law. These are the two case laws regarding sudden medical emergencies in Ohio. Obviously, this is from an attorney that is not associated to this case,
Mhm.
but they have a very good synopsis of what these two case laws are. The first one is Lehman v. Hanem. On January 4th, excuse me, not 14th, but 4th, 1956, Lehman was driving west on US Route 30 in Stark County, Ohio, while Hanem was driving east. While they were passing each other, Hanem crossed the center line of the highway and crashed into Lehman's car, injuring Lehman. Hanem claimed that his car crossed the center line because he lost consciousness due to unforeseeable cause. The burden of proof rested on him, the driver, to prove that he crossed the line because he became unconscious, so it was impossible to control the car, and he did not anticipate the unconsciousness. Hanem had a physician that testified supporting his claim of unforeseeable unconsciousness, verifying the burden of proof on his part. Loss of consciousness was a full defense to this negligence. Supreme Court of Ohio ruled that if Hanem had been conscious up to the point of the collision, he would have been found guilty. However, when the driver of an automobile is suddenly stricken by a period of unconsciousness in which he, or in today's language, she, has no reason to anticipate, and which renders it impossible for them to control the car he or she is driving, they cannot be charged with negligence. The sudden emergency medical doctrine was uniformly put into place in Ohio. So not even a man that killed two others while being unconscious at the wheel could be held liable.
Now, this is interesting because this says the person can't even be charged with negligence. In Mackenzie's case, they went way beyond negligence.
Correct.
They charged her with deliberate premeditated murder.
Correct.
That goes way beyond negligence.
Yes. The next court case affirmed the first one, and this second case is Roman v. Estate of Gobo. In 2003, another case came that tried to overrule the layman. It was layman doctrine or ruling. However, it was unsuccessful, and it was just reaffirmed. In '99, Nino Gobo was driving a car in Cleveland. He suddenly hit another car, sped up, swerved, returned to the road, swerved again, ran over a yard sign, came back onto the road to the driving left of center and crashed into two other cars. Both Nino and his wife, Frances, who was in the car with him, died at the collision. Two others were killed as a result of the crash. Two of the injured parties sued the estate of Nino Gobo, and Gobo's estate used the sudden medical emergency doctrine as a defense, as Gobo had suffered a heart attack just before the incident. So he had a heart attack, loses control of the car, crashes, and we get this. During the trial, it was brought up that Gobo had a history of issues of arteries, which made it hard for him to walk. A doctor testified saying that a person that would have narrowing arteries around the heart would likely also have narrowing arteries in the leg. However, the doctor also testified that Gobo should not have been restricted in his driving, even though he suffered from a medical or from a sudden cardiac death, which could not be foreseen. It was also in the trial that Gobo had bypass surgery in 1979 and had visited physicians throughout the 80s and 90s for chest pain. The injured parties argued that because Gobo knew about his medical condition, he should be held liable. This was shot down, as it would set a precedent for all drivers with any serious medical conditions to have restrictions. What constitutes a sudden medical emergency can range from having a seizure to a stroke to mental delusions or bad reaction to medication. While this case was cited for the estate of Gobo, two of the judges commented they would like to see compensation for damages, whether through legislature or through insurance policy. One of the judges said a better rule would be to have the victim sue for damages from the person who sudden medical emergency ended in violation of law and or resulting injuries or death. So those are the two case laws that go to Mackenzie. Now the question is, they had a doctor that was in the ER after Mackenzie's airlifted to the hospital, as well as a paramedic who provided care for Mackenzie on scene before the helicopter arrived. They both said, we don't see any signs of seizure. Well, unfortunately, seizures are very limited items as far as leaving or not leaving recognizable illnesses or effects or symptoms. So one of the things that comes up is why what is if Mackenzie did have a seizure, shouldn't she have just let off the gas pedal and things like that? Well, here's a study that was found, um, and this was a case of the Department of Neurology, Neurosurgery in Japan. Um, let me just raise this a little bit. Let me zoom in real quick. Okay. So they started this in November 5th of 2019. It was revised in December, and amended and updated again in the current version in January 31st of 2020. A driving simulator system with simultaneous video EEG recording was constructed. The system was assembled at a reasonable low cost, all this other stuff. They go into how they completed everything. An epileptic seizure, or any seizure for that matter, during the course of driving can result in a serious car accident. However, basic data on how epileptic seizures can actually affect driving performance is significantly lacking. So they went through and they created all of this. Um, Drivers with epilepsy are generally regarded as having higher risk for motor vehicle accidents. The assumption is made that seizures with impaired awareness and or sensory function during driving results in the high probability of dangerous operation and subsequent risk for a crash of the vehicle. Um, so, what did they do? They created a testing simulator. They had their patient, and I apologize for the very small imagery here, racing simulator, and they had the patients do um, basically just drive around a digital track.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they did is they monitored the patient using a EEG, electroencephalogram, which is the device that you can see the patient wearing on top of their head. That's what all of this squiggly marks. I'm not a neurologist. I know this tells them something. It's all Greek to me. I don't understand it, but it makes sense to them. So they were triggering the seizures in these patients, and I will scroll down and get to the meat and potatoes of what they were talking about, and that is under here under discussion, and it's listed right here. To the best of our knowledge, there has been no detailed study in which both EEG and driving-related parameters were simultaneously recorded and directly compared during a focal seizure. This case illustrates how focal impaired awareness seizures can result in unattended acceleration, loss of braking and steering ability, followed by high-speed car crashes.
Exactly what happened on July 31st, 2022.
That's my thoughts as well. Yes.
I mean, it's almost like they wrote this report specifically for that. I mean, because that's exactly what happened. Rapid acceleration, no braking. Um, wow,
hmm
unbelievable.
Yeah. So I was like very blown away by that, um, to say the least. And I was like, okay, this is something I did also send to her attorney for documentation. As I said, there was also the police never contacted or spoke to a neurologist, even though they had the neurologist's name um, in this case.
Hmm.
And she was diagnosed before she even had her learner's permit. So, how do you get to that point? You know, um, it's just very, very, very odd. So, I'm just trying to find the.
Let me ask you a sidebar
Yes.
question where you're looking
Mhm.
for what you're looking at now. Um, I want to try to tackle this from a legal perspective.
Mhm.
If this was a jury trial and Eric Hanson is sitting on the jury, what does the prosecution need to show you to convince you that this was premeditated murder? And if they had shown, would have if they were able to show, just give me a few ABC, these facts, then I'm buying that it's premeditated murder. In other words, how could they have filled in the holes in their case that create so much doubt?
So, if I was on the jury and the prosecutor needed to show that this was premeditated and that Mackenzie did, in fact, uh, execute this plan, uh, you just cannot rely on innuendo and assumptions. Yes, at trial, they did bring in an expert witness who examined Mackenzie's car, who gave, a, for lack of a better description, a very long winded description of how badly damaged her car was. Okay, I don't need that. We can tell from the vehicle photographs the car was demolished upon impact. I don't need to know which bolt out of 300 bolts snapped
Mhm.
and what kind of. I don't need to know that.
It
That's
becomes redundant at some point. Yeah,
it's very redundant. It's sort of like duh type
overkill.
uh,
Yeah.
overkill information. I need meat and potatoes. I need you to prove to me that she was even conscious. Can you prove that?
Okay.
Okay. Can you prove it, Mr. Prosecutor? Well, no, not 100%. Okay.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
just to keep this moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's say they have images that prove that she's conscious and sitting upright.
Mhm.
What next? What do they need to prove next?
So, and this is where there were two videos. The first one does show she's upright and conscious, but that was well over 7/10 of a mile away,
Mhm.
and we see it from the front end of the vehicle, front driver's side vehicle. The crash video that I would be presented in this case shows it from the passenger side rear point of view. How can you say it's she is conscious when we can't even see inside the car?
Mhm.
It's black windows. The perspective is kind of high skewed. You know, if you kind of look from a three-quarter view image of the rear,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not very clear.
What I'm saying
My
is just for the sake of moving this along,
yeah,
let's just say that you did see in the second video, you did see that she was in the car, she was conscious, she was upright. What next? What do you need to see next?
I would need to see if if we had an inside car or inside camera, I would need to know what she is doing inside. Is she sitting upright and kind of stone faced? Is she saying "See you on the other side, guys"? You know, what is she doing?
Mhm.
Because it's very it's a difficult question to ask because we don't have that data, and it's hard for me to say what would I need.
All right.
Um,
Let me just give me a second here.
mhm.
All right. Just so you know what Eric is talking about. This is the video that we actually have. Two clips. I'm going to show them.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Here she's approaching the intersection. She is
Yep.
approaching, and she is now turning right on Progress Road.
Correct.
And that's that's obviously the impact.
Correct.
Okay. So again, reiterate what you see in the first video that you don't see in the second.
So what we see is a frontal image, and as the vehicle is making the right-hand turn from southbound Pearl Road to westbound Progress Drive, when you do a frame-by-frame image, you can actually see Mackenzie sitting upright. She's got her hands on the steering wheel. She's making that right-hand turn. You can see Dominic in the passenger seat. You also can see what appears to be a mobile device, a cell phone, illuminated inside the car.
Okay.
Um, when we when we look at that camera, you can see it's brightly lit. You can see inside of the car. The resolution is a lot better than the other camera. And what we are seeing is someone who is making everything I said previously on the last video, which is they're conscious at the time of the turn. She's aware of her actions at the time of the turn. She's aware of her surroundings at the time of the turn. She's driving really in a textbook manner on how to properly perform a right-hand turn. She's using the right turn lane. She's using her turn signal. She's adjusting her speed appropriately. If it hadn't been for the crash, this is a type of video I would say to new drivers saying, this is how you make a turn.
Do this. Yeah.
um, Now, when we get to the other video of the car speeding and crashing, what we don't see is we don't see Mackenzie because of the perspective of the car. We don't see Dominic, who should be at least visible if things were appropriate as far as lighting conditions. We don't even see Davian. He should have been really the most visible out of the three. We don't even see him. The glass appears black. The lighting conditions are overpowering the video surveillance camera. We can tell the date and time. We know it's dark out. We know that with relative appropriate amount of guessing of the street conditions, meaning they're not wet from rain, they're not icy, they're not covered in snow. They're dry. They are dry. It's dry pavement. As the vehicle gets further away from the camera, resolution goes right down the proverbial tubes, and you do see a little flicker of a brake light. That flicker of the brake light is not anyone inside of that car hitting the brakes. That is the automated system registering a close impact, and it's just triggering it. It just did it on its own. And that was verified by the Ohio State Highway Patrol. They verified that it was a flicker caused by a sensor system inside the vehicle. So when you see those car commercials where suddenly the car suddenly stops without
Mhm.
the driver being aware of it, that's that kind of crash avoidance system that kicked in. But the crash avoidance system only kicks in when it's, I believe, 5 miles an hour or less. But in this case, it just triggered, which is why you do see the brake lights pop on just momentarily. Um, because we can't see what's going inside that car, we're left with speculation. Is she awake? Is she unconscious? I don't know. This is where the other data that I've already shown, like the schematic of how they were found, come into play. Because that type of crash, that definitely would have kept her sitting upright just because of the tension on the seatbelt strap. Um, and if it had been as severe as the police and prosecution say, well, there probably wouldn't have been a trial. Instead, there would have been a third funeral. So, um, but as I said earlier, there was also no, as the police were investigating this, they never spoke to a neurologist. And a neurologist is very important in this case. So the defense, as part of the post-conviction process, did reach out to a doctor. And I'd like to share that with you right now, if I could. Let's see here. So this is, blew it up just a little bit too much. This is an affidavit from Dr. Kamal Chamali, being duly sworn and disposed in accordance with law, respect to the matter of State of Ohio versus Mackenzi Shirilla. He's a professor of neurology at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, where he had taught for 3.5 years at the time of this affidavit. He has also served as director of the autonomic program and laboratories for 3.5 years. He's a medical doctor with specialty in neurology and has been licensed to practice in the state of Ohio since 2001 or 2021, excuse me. Throughout his career, he's never been subject to sanctions from the State Medical Board of Ohio, nor has his ability to practice medicine ever been revoked. So he goes through his background and things of that nature. As a neurologist, he's studied, treat all types of episodes that mimic POTS, including seizures, syncope, which is sudden loss of consciousness, or of neurological causes. I'm going to scroll forward here. Seizures are also part of the differential diagnosis of POTS. There are common cardiac and non-cardiac symptoms associated with POTS. Common cardiac symptoms include palpitations, lightheadedness, shortness of breath, and chest pain, pre-syncope, and syncope. Common non-cardiac symptoms include brain fog, fatigue, headaches, gastrointestinal disturbances, and sleep problems. There are other reasons, not directly related to POTS, why an individual might lose consciousness, such as loss of consciousness might be caused by seizures, can be caused by seizures, which can be either epileptic or non-epileptic. Alternatively, an individual may lose consciousness due to vasovagal, I think is how you say it, disorders.
Vasovagal. My mom has that.
Thank you for verifying that. And cardiac-related problems or disease. Now he goes into the specifics of why he was contacted and why he was making these statements. He was contacted by Mackenzi's legal representatives to serve as a consultant and expert witness based upon the case. Specifically, the law firm asked me if I could offer an opinion as to whether or not there's evidence supporting the conclusion that Ms. Shirilla suffered a medical episode at or around the time of the automobile accident on July 31st, 2022 that could account for the collision that resulted in the deaths of Dominic Russo and Davian Flanagan. So as he goes through, he says, as part of my expert analysis, I reviewed portions of Mackenzi's medical records concerning her diagnosis and treatment of POTS, as well as medical records that were generated in connection with the accident that occurred on July 31st. I also reviewed portions of the transcripts from the criminal proceedings, as well as information regarding prior instances where Ms. Shirilla reported experiencing a medical episode caused by POTS. Lastly, I reviewed independent scientific research and studies that are relevant to the scope of my engagement in this matter. Medical records that I reviewed show Ms. Shirilla was diagnosed with POTS several years before the accident in question. Furthermore, the records and other pertinent documents refer prior references and experience episodes relating to her POTS condition, including lightheadedness, fainting, and losing consciousness. Ms. Shirilla's records shortly after the accident on July 31st confirmed that her lactate levels were 3.7 mmol per liter, I think is what that stands for. I'm not a doctor, so I'm doing my best to interpret that. However, he goes on to say that
What is it again?
3.7 mmol over L, which is significantly and abnormally higher than normal, which he goes and says 0.05 to 2 mmol over L. Similarly, he looked at Mackenzi's oxygen level, which was measured at 82%, which is low and generally considered an indicative of hypoxia, which is anything below 90%. Additionally, EMS reported that Ms. Shirilla was initially unconscious when they arrived on scene. Once she regained consciousness, she was described as confused. Similarly, Ms. Shirilla reported as having no recollection to the event and was unable to remember whether she was driving or the time frames immediately preceding the accident. Her inability to remember these details persisted throughout her stay in the hospital, as well as after she was discharged. In my opinion, this memory loss would qualify as both and I can't pronounce this anterograde and retrograde amnesia. Again, I'm fumbling my way through this.
Mm-hmm.
In the absence of evidence of concussion or head trauma, these symptoms and laboratory findings can be suggestive of a seizure episode with loss of consciousness and post-ictal amnesia. So already he is forming an opinion that this looks like a medical issue. Apart from the documentation relating to this case, I also reviewed scientific research and literature concerning POTS. One study that I reviewed, and you can all read this, and he goes, I even attached a copy of this to my of the study to my affidavit. The study focused on individuals who lost consciousness while driving, which ultimately led to accidents. The researchers reached 4 conclusions that I believe are relevant to Ms. Shirilla's case. First, idiopathic generalized epilepsy crashes were most often, i.e. 70% of the time, preceded by the vehicle going of control, while focal epilepsy crashes had prior movement of going straight ahead. Overall, these 2 characteristics represented 86% of epilepsy-associated crash movements. Second, 91% of epilepsy-related collisions were of a fixed object or a vehicle. Third, 51% of all crashes had prior movement suggestive of apparent deliberate driving, going straight ahead, or slow stopping, or turning, or overtaking. The majority of these cases, 83%, had focal epilepsy. A total of 17 out of 36 of these cases went to have a off-path, on-straight crash, more typical of seizure-related crash. Fourth, crashes involving generalized epilepsy tend to involve younger drivers and occur earlier in the day. 17-year-old girl, 5:30 in the morning. I think that qualifies.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon my review of the relevant materials here to discuss, it is my opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific and medical certainty, that the evidence is consistent with Ms. Shirilla having suffered a medical episode at or around the time of the accident that caused her to lose consciousness. Specifically, Ms. Shirilla reported and or documented symptoms: elevated lactate levels, low blood oxygen level, elevated heart rate, anterograde and retrograde amnesia are what I would expect to see in an individual who has had experienced a medical episode causing them to lose consciousness. Of note, it is impossible to definitively establish whether an individual had a seizure after the fact, and in the absence of a positive EEG or prolonged alteration of consciousness or residual seizure activity or reoccurrence of seizures. The other important point is that it is very possible that Ms. Shirilla's episode of syncope and loss of consciousness, which are documented in her medical history, prior to the accident were caused by seizures, even if she was not diagnosed with seizures and she was diagnosed with POTS. Signed,
So
Dr. Chamali.
the
So we
judge
now have we
didn't get
not
to see any of this, right?
nope. This was submitted as far as um, post conviction relief. So the judge actually did see this, from my understanding. I could be wrong, however, but I do believe she did see this
After the initial conviction.
after the initial conviction. However, the judge ruled that uh, this data was provided to the court uh, too far after the conviction, and therefore time frame had expired, which
Just
I think,
ridiculous.
which to me,
Outrageous.
true, it's outrageous. And to me, and I've said this numerous times, truth does not have a time limit. Um, we have seen in hundreds of cases where advancements in technology have led to exonerations, um, where cold cases, they, the cold cases, they test the DNA, and the DNA comes back to a guy or a gal or whoever, and they are able to go and arrest that person for the crime that was committed 20 years earlier. Just the opposite, they're able to exonerate because a person might be in prison for murder, for example, and they may have type uh, O negative blood, and the blood that was finally tested was AB blood,
Right.
and the DNA doesn't even match. And so they're able to find that person and bring them to justice, and at the same time exonerate the person that unfortunately has been sitting in prison for so long.
Right.
So truth does not have a time limit as far as I'm concerned. And
So Eric, just two questions. I know
yeah.
we're running out of time here. I want
Hmm.
to we need to wrap this up, but just two
Yeah.
quick questions. And we discussed this before.
Hmm.
It's inexplicable to me that they chose a bench trial over a jury trial. Do we have any idea why, or was it just because the defense attorney was just totally incompetent?
I totally incompetent, as far as I can tell. Now, the question was raised, and I asked this myself: why didn't her parents kind of step in um, as like, hey, wait a minute, you're not really representing our daughter very well. What are you doing? You should really listen to her, that type of thing. Well, the problem is they didn't know a lot of this stuff was going on inside of the courtroom, and the reason why is that they were actually listed as witnesses for the trial. The So they weren't able to get a, a moment by moment in real time. They could only get sort of a generalization after that day's proceedings. So a lot of the stuff that were presented at trial on day one, day two, that type of thing, they didn't find out until afterwards. Why Mackenzie was pressured, that's the word I'm going to use. I felt she was pressured into choosing a bench trial over a jury trial, um, because of her attorney and her parents
The
really
reason
had no
why I'm
way.
asking this,
So yeah.
Eric, because I don't want to try to sound conspiratorial here,
Hmm.
but if this goes to a jury trial, there's not a chance in hell there's a conviction. Because if
No,
this goes to a jury trial, it has to be unanimous, 12 people.
correct.
There is not a chance in hell that 12 people would have convicted her of two counts of premeditated murder based on the evidence that we have here.
Correct.
So I can't imagine that her lawyer would be so incompetent as to not know that, and to
Right.
think that she had better odds with a bench trial. So you have to wonder, what was his motivation? Was he just a complete idiot, or was he on the take, or it's inexplicable to me.
Your questions are valid, and I honestly cannot give you a really good reason. I'm dumbstruck as well. In fact, I will say this is that when Mackenzie was found guilty, and she was sentenced, right after she was led away, um, her attorney spoke to Mackenzie's dad and said, uh, you can throw me under the bus on this one. And like, okay, that's not a real encouraging sign
Yeah,
when you have an attorney like that. Um, Attorneys are supposed to be the experts and are supposed to be advocates for you. Um, this is why
yeah.
when you are confronted by police and they start
I mean,
asking
that's
you,
so callous. It's almost like, oh, my bad. Your daughter's going to prison for the rest of her life, but
right,
oops, mistakes happen. I
right,
mean, credible.
it credible and very, very sad. And that is why and I know a lot of other folks are doing their best to try and at least help Mackenzie out with bringing all this data to light, because the narrative is always being repeated. It seems like about every 3 to 6 months, her story is brought up on social media again. Um,
Yeah,
you
the
know, just
media has made her out to be an absolute monster. They they,
yeah,
they really have.
they
So my second question:
mhm.
Where do things where do these things stand? Does it look like there's going to be a new trial? Does it look like, are you seeing any light at the end of the tunnel?
So no light at the end of the tunnel. We're still in the tunnel right now. The initial appeals were upheld, so the conviction was upheld. Um, Especially with the first appeal to the appeals court. Am I surprised that that went down that way? No. Am I surprised that the Supreme Court decided not to take up the case? No, I am not surprised. Um, in fact, it was the day after the Supreme Court said, "Yeah, we're not going to uh, hear this case," where Judge Russo said, um, "Yeah, your uh, post conviction relief is denied because you took too long." It's like she was waiting for the Supreme Court to say something. And currently, there is an appeal about that decision of no, we have the documents, they were submitted in a timely manner, the clock wasn't exceeded, the time limit was not exceeded. And so that's where we stand right now with the case. Um, Ideally, the best thing that could happen right now is there would be a retrial in a different jurisdiction. Um, that would be the most ideal situation, and in front of a jury, I should say, as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
where does that stand? Do you think that's a likely outcome, and when would that go forward?
I wish I had a better grasp of odds, 60-40, 50-50, that type of thing. To me, it's 50-50. It's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. I don't know. Do I think it should happen? Yes. Um, it's just a matter of what the courts say. An interesting thing that came up earlier today when I was preparing for this show, I came across an article that was conducted by the uh, University of Notre Dame, and it is talking about Brady violations. And I'm not talking about the Brady bill, gun bill type thing. It is actually a Supreme Court case of Brady versus Maryland, where if during the investigation of a criminal case there's anything that comes across that might be beneficial to the defendant or even exonerate them, they have an obligation to report that to the defense. And there are a number of things that can come up
That
in that.
disclosure is basically what you're talking about. Yeah.
Pretty much disclosure, yes. And if things like that are not disclosed, um, and it also involves law enforcement too. For example, a Brady disclosure of uh, like the officer acted in a manner that be considered biased. That could and result in that person being put on what is called a Brady watch, Brady list for officers. And basically, what that means is that an officer is considered so unreliable that it is detrimental to the prosecution to even have that officer testify. Um, and what's interesting is Ohio, where Mackenzie is at, they ranked fourth out of this whole study. But when you convert it to a per capita rate, Ohio ranks first. And guess what is the largest county that has this type of situation going on? The one she got convicted in.
Hmm.
So, um,
So the worst county in the worst state for this type of
based upon that,
abuse.
based upon that study, yes. And
Wow.
it's just like, um, there was another case that I won't bring up the name, but it happened right around the same time that Mackenzie had was involved in her accident, where another young man was convicted, and they said that the same prosecutor's office said that he intentionally murdered his infant child because the infant child managed to get a hold of a like a wet wipe and started to essentially eat it. And the child started to choke. He called 911. No signs of child abuse, but yet they said uh, the medical examiner said no way that this child can would have been able to swallow this wipe. Like, do you people ever have children? I mean,
Hmm.
seriously. Children explore the world by grabbing stuff and shoving it in their mouth. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the movie Grumpy Old Men, right?
And you're not making light of the tragic
No, I'm
situation, of
not.
course.
But look at the movie Grumpy Old Men,
Yeah.
where the grandpa says, "Relax, children swallow quarters all the time. If she poops out 2 dimes and a nickel, then you have an issue." That type of thing. But again, that's how babies explore the world. I know this from a fact because I have a lot of nieces I've had to babysit and nephews I've had to babysit. I'm like, when you're watching the children, you have to keep a very close eye on them. Um, and it's even worse when you have multiple children you're trying to keep an eye on because you don't know what kind of trouble they're getting into, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, my hats off to all the moms out there, by the way, if you have multiple children that are all roughly the same age. So,
I got you.
so.
Before we go, you've just started working with an organization that
Mhm.
that deals with this kind of thing on a larger level of advocacy for wrongfully convicted persons. So, talk a little bit about that and what your role is with this group.
So it's Wrongful Conviction News. It's a organization that advocates for people who, after analysis of the case and examination of the case, um, w- that we start to advocate for them, whatever we can do. Currently, I am an advocate for Mackenzie's case, but I have also been asked to participate in analysis for other cases as well. So that's just starting out for me right now. As far as a lot of other assistance, being an advocate, primarily for Mackenzie's case, of course, because I've just been invested with it for quite a while here, as you know. I'm constantly looking for other support groups as well and support organizations. One of them is called Making an Exoneree, and it's based out of the Georgetown University law program, in which undergraduates provide not legal representation because they don't have their Juris Doctorates, but at least some legal groundwork support. And so we're trying to get them on board with Mackenzie's case on that. There's some behind the scenes things going on with that. Hopefully, they'll be able to provide uh, some support in Mackenzie's case um, here in the near future. Just fingers crossed on that one, because it
Right.
would really be nice to have folks who are a little bit more in tune with the lawyer legal aspect than the law enforcement investigative aspect, which is more my realm. So,
All right. Erica, I hope you'll keep us updated on any progress in this case.
mhm.
Is there anywhere that anybody that might want to donate to Mackenzie's legal defense could do so? How would they do that?
Yes. So the easiest way is actually going to her support Facebook page. If you go to Facebook, the Facebook page is Free Mackenzie Shirilla. It's on Facebook. And in fact, I can bring it up real quick here for you.
Yeah,
Give me one moment.
we're actually linked to that page, so we'll include that page
Okay,
in
perfect.
our show notes. Let me ask you this:
Perfect.
are they able to actually um, send? Are they in contact with her? Are they able to send messages? Like if somebody wanted to send a message of encouragement to
Yes.
Mackenzie, would they would be able to relay that to her?
Yes. And they would be able to relay that information, and they have done it for other people. They I don't want to overwhelm them and speak for their behalf because I'm not an admin for them, but they do a really good job on on staying on topic and providing the support and updated news um, regarding her case. They can also provide anyone viewers that are interested in donating the proper donation steps. I don't have those handy in front of them, and I don't in front of me, and I don't want to give out the wrong information. Um, so I would definitely look at that Facebook page. There are also similar named Free Mackenzie Shirilla videos that are on TikTok showing things like interview with Christine Russo, for example, when she is being interviewed, and the the paperwork that I showed you, like the affidavit from the doctor, that's just a small portion of the legal paperwork that they do have published on the Facebook page. So, um, and all of that has been submitted. It's all there, and it's available for anyone who wants to read it. So I would encourage people to go there. To go there.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for your time and
Well,
for your diligence in this case. And I hope we'll be able to have you back at some future point if you have any kind of updates. We're going to be keeping up with the
mhm.
progress of this, and hopefully Mackenzie will be freed one day and reunited with her family. And that is certainly no insensitivity to the families of the victims who obviously
Right.
we grieve. It was a horrible tragedy, and two lives were lost, and we haven't lost sight of that.
And Mackenzie herself, she was so upset she was actually threatening to leave the hospital against medical advice, not because she was in fear of prosecution or trying to run away from potential criminal charges. No, she was threatening to leave because she wanted to attend Dominic's funeral and say goodbye. And yeah, they have their problems. Every couple does. Um, you know, exemplified in the divorce rates that we have.
Yeah, that's the fallen world we live in.
Um, but she was threatening to leave AMA because she wanted to go and say goodbye to Dominic and to show people that she really does care and really did care about him. And in my heart, I still think to this day she still does, even though she is where she currently is. So,
All right. God bless you, Eric. You have a great night, and thank you for all your work in this.
well, thank you, John, for having the platform and inviting me on. I appreciate it, and I know other supporters of Mackenzie appreciate it as well. So,
All right.
um, you have a good night. Appreciate it.
You too. God bless.
Mhm.